Yeah, I recently went through and experienced the loss of my grandfather. And my grandfather in his 90s was an incredible man. He lived an exceptional life. And so, as much as losing my grandfather was impactful, it was also impactful that we got the chance to celebrate his life because he made impact on hundreds of thousands of people. Not just by his generosity, but by his character, by the influence he had. Just an amazing man. And as we were going through the process of both mourning and celebrating, there's a biblical principle that showed up in my life. And the biblical principle is that it's more effective to go to the house of mourning than it is to the house of feasting. You learn so much more in the house of mourning than the house of feasting. And I was privileged to be the speaker out of all of the grandchildren. I was the one that was selected that had the opportunity to speak, not because I was special or I had a different relationship with them, just because it was a difficult time and a lot of them just didn't want to speak or didn't necessarily need to speak, but I was privileged to do so. And as I stood up and told the stories of his life, told the interactions I had with him, told funny stories, sad stories, memorable, powerful stories, I began to take note of all the things that happened in his life and how his voice still speaks, in my mind. Those impactful people in our life, you find yourself saying their same words. You find yourself thinking thoughts that came as a direct result of them. And he was so kind in my life. He always spent so much time as we would drive places. He would philosophize. He would talk to me about his philosophy, his thoughts, his ideas and ideologies. And those still play in my head. The two most impactful men in my life were my dad and my grandfather. And my grandfather's voice just cuts through so much of the clutter in my life and still speaks today as I try to lead the organizations that I have the chance to lead. And as I father, three amazing young men, and as I build relationships and spend time trying to become a man that has a life worth living. So much of it is dependent on my belief system about him and who he was and the standard and the bar that he set. And so because of that, in his loss, it was a massive catalyst to future things that I want in my life. It was a great teacher, as was the loss of my sister, my brother, other family members. I go back to my life, and the most impactful moments in my life really are the loss of loved ones, because you're forced with the bar, the measuring stick of their life. My sister passed away when she was 3. And I remember at 5 years of age, thousands of people coming to the funeral home and realizing that she had a massive impact at 3 years old, and the loss of her and the impact my parents had as well was a bar that was set in my life. The loss of my brother, again, another bar set in my life. My grandfather, a bar set in my life, which all became catalyst for who I am today. And so it is better to go to the house of mourning, to the house of feasting, because we learn so much more in the depths, in the struggle, in the valley, versus learning, what life is all about in the mountaintop. The mountaintop is a fleeting moment. Those deep, dark, difficult moments are catalysts for success.
Do you have any advice for people who have had loss and that seems to have broken them?
Yes. Rather
than build them?
I had very emotionally intelligent parents that helped me deal with loss. In my life, I have had massive loss, but my parents also did as well. Two siblings of mine passed away, but that means 2 children of my parents. As hard as it is to lose a sibling, as a parent, I cannot imagine what it would be like to lose a child. It would be unbearable. My mom, with extreme emotional intelligence, when I'd struggle, I remember, as a young boy struggling to sleep, I'd cry myself to sleep just because of the loss of my sister and the relationship I had with her. And my mom would come in and she would comfort me. And then she would say, "Eddie, tell me about your favorite memory of Rebecca. Talk to me about the moment that she made you laugh. Like, tell me what your favorite toy was that she played with." And my mom indelibly put her memories into my heart and into my mind that will never go away. But my mom was teaching me to find gratitude for the moments I did have. When you have or experience loss, it is so vital to find gratitude for what you've had versus the suffering for what you're missing. The gratitude for what you've had can override the suffering for the current issue. And that goes for whether you've lost them to death or just to a break in relationship. If you can find gratitude for what you have had, what you did have, it transcends. And what it does is in that fork in the road, you get the chance, anytime you suffer loss, there's a fork in the road. And the fork in the road is either choosing that this will be a ceiling, I'll never go past it, or it's a massive catalyst for future huge growth. Every single time. And so it's either I'll choose the ceiling and I'm okay with it and I'll just live my life here. Or if you can find gratitude in the moments and the opportunities and what it did provide for you, you can use that as a catalyst that no one else can touch. Like there's something about loss that when you process it the right way, it becomes the great accelerator to the next success. Think about people's failures in business. Let's relate it to more business. I was talking with a young man last week, and he came to me for some advice. And sensitive subjects, so I'll be very careful with it, and I would never, explain who this person is. But he said, I left home at 21. I have a really bad relationship with my dad. And he said, and it really isn't his fault. It's kind of both of our faults. And he said, and I really have yet to find success past that moment. He was like, do you think that the struggle with my success or where I'm headed in life is directly related to the relationship I have with my father? And I said, I believe that anytime we allow a relationship or a loss to dictate who we are, I think it is the next ceiling in our life. I think it's the next lid, And I said, how often do you think about the issue with your father? How often do you talk about it? How often does it come up when you're pursuing greatness or you're trying to build this company or, whatever it was that he was trying to accomplish? And he said, every day. I said, then it's absolutely something you have to go deal with because it is the ceiling. It is something that is creating this negative resistance in your life that you need to go release that and go back. And, he was 25, 26, so he'd been dealing with it for 4 or 5 years now. And he texted me the other night and said, I went back and rekindled the relationship with my father. He said, we got a long way to go. He was like, but I already feel the tension beginning to remove from my life. And he said, I think you're right. This may be the great catalyst to my success. We'll see. But I believe that there is something there for sure.
Can I ask you to relate it to business? Is there a step-by-step process where this might happen? There's a fork in the road. They've hit certain things in business. How do you identify those, move past those as a leader, as a department? Mm-hmm. And then do they translate back to your personal?
Oftentimes in business, we find that the same failures began to create a narrative in our life. You have two. It's not just when you have one loss, it's when you have two losses and they look similar. And all of a sudden you begin to identify, that's who I am. I'm just bad with money. I'm just bad with people. I'm just bad with technology. I'm just bad with customers. I'm just whatever it is. We begin to create the narrative. And what I find is that the hardest thing to overcome is when we've had two losses that look similar because it becomes our identity. What I find is the only way to release that is to own it, speak about it, and talk through it. And oftentimes we have this inner turmoil, where it's that voice that's just nagging in our head telling us like, well, you're just not good with money or you're just not good with this or whatever. You're never going to find success that we have to deal with. And I can tell you that business is science, right? Like if you're not successful in business, it's really not because it's not because of what you're doing in business. It's usually who you are in that business, right? And to identify our strengths and weaknesses always allow us to take the next right step, but to speak and get honest about it, it holds us accountable to the next right step. There are some things that I lack in my life that if I speak to them, what it does is it creates accountability for me to not live there. Like one of the big, things that I have to deal with all the time is I'm not great with people. I don't build relationships easy. And I say it all the time. I always say, I'm really good at numbers. I'm really good at the vision side. I'm really good at this. I'm really good at that. I'm good at management, holding people accountable. I'm really horrible at building relationships. And the reason I say it all the time is, and most people, there are lots of people in my organization that would say, actually, I think you're probably pretty good at it, right? But it's because I'm constantly holding myself accountable to it by speaking the truth. I'm actually really not good at it. I work at it every day. I put it in my calendar. I talk to my assistant about it. I work at it, I have a hot list of people that I need to connect with on a monthly basis, and I have a list, and I have my EA put it in my calendar so I never miss the opportunity to connect with them. I'm working really, really, really hard at it, but it is the one thing that I have to work hard at. And so by being open and honest, it holds me accountable.
I'm really interested in hearing you talk about your actual processes. Like when I heard about Toggle, I was like, I want to go download that.
Yeah.
So hearing those things I'd love, and I think the audience might love those too, is like, these are the things I do.
Yeah.
You speak them out loud, you write them in a list, you talk to your assistant about it, and then you schedule out.
I do.
So I love that. That's like something I could apply today.
Yeah. And I'll just walk you back through that for a second. So I know that one of the areas that I need improvement in is building deeper relationships. In order to build a deeper relationship, I know that there has to be time. Because I'm so focused on my time, what I do is I actually schedule relationships out of my life versus create inclusion for them. So what I have in my list, I make lists, lots of lists. One of the lists that I have is what I call my hot list. My hot list are people in my life that are important for me to have a relationship with, and I desire a relationship with them. This is more than just my employees. This is, my mom, my dad, my grandmother, people that if I am just, 100 miles an hour, will forget to just reach out to them, forget to send them a text and so my brother's on there, my children are on there, because if I don't keep that in front of me, I'm 100 miles an hour in whatever direction I'm headed, and I'll naturally build a relationship with the person I'm working next to. If we're digging a ditch together, I share my life with you, right? But if you're not in the ditch with me, then it's people just almost don't exist, because it's I'm focused. And so that is the issue. And so I have my EA schedule time every single week. She has a list of every person that I want to build a relationship with. She schedules it in, and I get to make the choice. Do I make a phone call? Do I text? And so on every drive, she schedules it in. So if I'm driving to and from work, she puts it in there. If I'm on my way to the gym, she'll put it in there. Driving to and from the airport, she'll put it in there. And so I try to use every minute of every day very intentionally. And some days I'll send a text. Some days I'll, make a phone call. And everyone from family to certain celebrities, and there are some celebrities that I want to emulate in my life, and so I don't want to just have a relationship with them. It's I actually want to learn more about them. One of the people in my life is Tim Tebow, and Tim has become kind of a part of our world. We've had him speak for us a few times. And recently he has his night to shine, and in order to build a relationship with Tim, our organization sponsored it. I showed up at his night to shine. I went and participated, and I sent him a text at least once a month, try to give him a call periodically. But that's a big deal to me because I love Tim Tebow's kindness, and I love his passion for life, and I love how he serves others. The other night I watched him. They shot a video of him walking a special needs person down the aisle at his night to shine. And I just watched him as he rubbed the lady's hand, and it made an impact on me. And I thought, that's one element in my life I want to improve on. I want to be I want to be more kind. I want to look at those who cannot serve me in any other way, but I want to serve them, And so he's one of those men that I feel like I want to become more like. I want him to rub off on me. And so he's in that list of people that I consistently connect with. So many people let life happen to them versus them happen to life. I think you have to live life intentionally. And I think that your intentions have to be broken down into, what do I want my life to stand for and what do I want to accomplish? That's the big one. That's the hardest, because that's changed so much in my life. Then you have to, then pare it down to, who do I actually want to make impact on? Life is about impact. Life is about influence. And you're only going to have enough energy and ability to impact so many people. So you have to be intentional about the ones you are impacting. And then it comes down to, what will I exchange my time for? So for me, it's kind of like the macro down to the micro. But what I find is when I don't have the macro in sight, if I just focus on who I want to make impact on, and I carve out the time that allows that to happen, then the bigger picture kind of takes care of itself. I have a lot of millennials and younger who I've talked to, and I'm privileged to have influence on their life, and they'll ask me that question: how did you find your purpose? How did you find impact others? Or how did you find what it is that you feel like you're called to do? And for me, it was about being diligent enough that and intentional enough that it gave my life room for that to show up. I don't think that I actually sought out for it. I just gave enough room for it to show up. Really, Impact Others was a result of me going on a vacation and a friend of mine saying, "Hey, while you're on vacation, would you mind coming over and checking out my orphanage?" It was leaving enough space to do something outside of the ordinary, right? To allow for those opportunities in my life. Today's Monday. I got up this morning. I looked at my schedule for today. I looked at my schedule for this entire week. I hit my EA up. I said, cancel this one, get rid of this one, shorten this one, add this to my life, add this. Because when I looked at my calendar today, Monday, when I'm setting my week, I realized that I left very little time for what is important to me, and I just allowed life to happen into my calendar this week. And I changed it. And I think, she probably gets tired of those Monday morning texts, because every Monday I do this. Like every Monday, it's a part of my ritual, is to just look at my week and say, let's make room. And, there are quite a few people that thought they were going to have a meeting with me this week. They probably really wanted a meeting with me this week. They probably deserve a meeting with me this week. That I told them, I'm sorry, I don't have the time to meet with you. And, most of those people are outside of our staff, or they're outside of my world. It's just somebody who saw me at a conference, or somebody who wants something from me. But I have to learn to say no. And in saying no, you say yes to so many other things. And so there was a really amazing person I said no to this week that, for my own sake, I would have really enjoyed the conversation. But what I recognized was I really needed to have more time in my schedule for the nonprofit Impact Others, and we were able to fit another meeting in for that. And that was with somebody overseas that is one of our regional directors that I have a really big vision for. And so I had to make the choice. I either get to spend time with somebody I really, really want to talk to, or I actually get to fulfill what it is that my life is and my calling is, directed towards. And that's always going to be the choice if you put it in front of you. So you have to be intentional, right? Like you can't just allow life to happen to you. You have to get very intentional, make lists, make sure you govern your schedule, and then ultimately make sure that you are strong enough to say no. That's hard. It's hard because you don't want to disappoint people. And I'm sure that this week I disappointed some people, but that's not why I am on this earth. I'm not here to make everybody happy with me. I am here to accomplish something, and sometimes making the hard choice disappoints some people. But I can tell you that this week I will accomplish more towards the end goal and the result of what I want for my life based on those choices. Larry Yatch, one of our team members here, he said to me one time, he said, what if every time you said, this is really hard, you change the word to easy? He was like, what do you think that would do? And I said, I don't know, I'll try it. And so I started thinking through that process. And really what I found is what is difficult in our life oftentimes is tied to our perception. Our perception actually mandates the level of difficulty. It really isn't the actual action of it. What I find is, like, for instance, what things that I find hard. I find it hard to give somebody open feedback when it's negative and I know they may not receive it well. And I remember after that, I had to talk to someone about, how they needed to clean up their attitude, change kind of their mindset. They needed to show up to work differently, and I knew I had to have that conversation. And in my mind, I thought, okay, this is going to be a hard conversation. And I remember switching and going, okay, this is going to be an easy conversation. And then I thought, can I actually make myself believe that this is easy? Like, is it easy enough to just change the way I think? And I remember thinking, like, okay, well, why is it easy? Well, it's easy because it's truth, number one. It's easy because it's just words. It's not like I'm lifting something heavy. There is no physical struggle here, so that's easy. If I look at the outcome of this, and the benefit is that I actually change someone's outcome in work, I change our culture, well, that actually is easy. And so it was funny how just the relationship with our word and our perception, our words and our perception, changed my entire outcome on that moment. And then when I went through it, I remember thinking at the end, like, oh, that was pretty easy. It was fascinating. And he talked to me about the relationship we have with our own language and how we dictate what our experience will be by the language or the perception based on our language it creates for us. That language is like paving a way. It's like, I'm actually paving this path and then I'm walking on it. And that if we change our language, we actually change the pathway. And when we change the pathway, our experience is different. That has been monumental for me. And it's weird that one little shift has made such a major impact. And I definitely owe that to Larry. Larry, had me think that. And I know he's been speaking that a lot at our conferences. But it's made a big difference. Go back to the concept of how one of the hardest things we have to do is say no, right? But when you say no, and now you're in the moment where you said no, and the thing that you ultimately were going to experience is now not happening, the relief you feel creates an ease, right? It's like, well, saying no actually creates more ease in our life than difficulty, right? And so there's something there in tricking your mind to think differently about the perception of what it actually entails to say no, to do difficult, hard things. It really changes the pathway, the experience, all the above. I think, for me, my overarching brand my philosophy in life is time, wealth, and purpose. Like, if we control our time, wealth is generated.
I'm writing this down.
You're good. Wealth, it needs to be redefined. Wealth is having enough for today without diminishing what I have for tomorrow. And then purpose, once I have control of my time, I generate enough wealth that I'm not concerned for monetary things, then I'm free to live a complete life of purpose. So for me, like that, if I ever get the chance to teach someone something, if somebody says, what do you want to teach? I'm always like that, like time, wealth, and purpose. I'll teach you the principles that I live my life by. And it's like, I would love for that to be kind of the legacy piece of what I do. Like, yes, what I want is, yes, I want to live a life of purpose myself. But what I really want is to teach others to control their time, create wealth, and ultimately live a free life that is free to be purposeful in complete totality. So, yeah.
Cool. I'm okay.
Okay.
Are you good?
Yep, I'm good. Thanks so much for being a part of the podcast and for listening today. I'd love to connect with you further, and you can connect with me on social media at Eddie Wilson Official on any of the social media channels.